The Chicago Gaylords, also known as the Almighty Gaylords, is a Chicago street gang which was most active during the mid and late 20th century. It originated in the neighborhood of Grand and Noble. The original president of the Gaylords selected the name after reading out the Gaylords in the public library. The Gaylords, later anglicized to Gaylord, were people from Normandy who lived near Chateau Gaillard, constructed by Richard. They were a part of the People Nation Alliance. They are reputed for disputing rival gangs near Kilbourne Park. The Chicago Gaylords, one of Chicago's oldest street gangs, was a club founded by World War II veterans, and the majority of the original members were Italian, Irish, and Greek Americans. This ethnic makeup reflected the population of the Grand and Ogden area at the time, that was known as one of Chicago's Little Italies. There were many such clubs in Chicago during the post-World War II era, and had their own clubhouses and baseball teams. The Gaylords Clubhouse was on the corner of Ohio and Noble Street. The Gaylords grew in the 1960s as middle-class whites left for the suburbs, leaving poor whites behind to fend for themselves in increasingly African-American slums. At the height of the Gaylords' reign in 1979, they were listed as the fourth most powerful gang in Chicago, with about 1,500 members, and were noted as Chicago's largest white street gang, considered a violent, bigoted outfit. In 1970, they were suspected for being involved in the murder of a black Chicago citizen named Joe Henson, but no charges were brought. A later feature article in the Chicago Reader alleged police and political cover-up. During the peak period, the Chicago Gaylords held sets or sections on the north side, west side, and the south side of Chicago. By the early 1980s, it was said the Gaylords were the third largest gang in Chicago, with over 6,000 members. The west side sections included Ohio and Noble, Ohio and LeClaire, and Monticello and Augusta. Their south side sections included back of the yards and West Englewood around 55th and Ashland, Sherman Park, Pilsen, 18th and Western, and Bridgeport, Throop Street. Their north side presence included Belmont Cragen, Manor Bowl, Rheinberg School, Chopin Park, Black Hawk Park, St. Jens, Humboldt Park, Moffett and Campbell, Logan Square, Palmer and California, Lawndale and Atledge, Irving Park, Albany and Byron, Kilbourne Park, Roscoe and Kilbourne, Kelvin Park, Kilbourne and Wrightwood, Dunham Park, Montrose and Narragansett, Ravenswood, Sealy and Ansley, and Uptown, Sunnyside and Magnolia, Lawrence and Broadway. Two of the most powerful Gaylord sections existed in Logan Square, Lawndale and Atgeld, L&A section, and Palmer in California, Palmer Street. By the early 1990s, the Gaylords were in decline, as many of their leaders went to prison, and the last of the whites were leaving the inner city for the suburbs. In 2011, police and federal agents arrested 9 members of suburban Gaylords factions on charges of drug dealing, gun trafficking, and violent intimidation. However, they continue to remain active within their strongholds in Chicago and its environs to this day. The sets or sections started by Kilbourne Park wore black and light blue. Sections started by Palmer Street wore black and gray. South side sections started by the 18th and Western section like 55th and Ashland and Sherman Park. They wore black and brown. The Gaylords. I know. If you hadn't heard of them, you were probably like, wow, what the hell kind of thumbnail is this? And that's why today we're doing this interview with an old-timer that was part of the Gaylords. He tells us all about it. What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video, and don't forget, leave a comment. Some people have left comments asking me like, hey, Chad, man, you ever interview any older dudes, man, and what prison was like for them and stuff like that? So today, man, no disrespect to my guest, but I'm going to bring an older gentleman on that he's been in prison probably about 40 years of his life. As crazy as that might sound, it's the truth. He's been in prison in Illinois. He's been in prison in Illinois, the feds, different places. But I'm going to let Buck come on and introduce himself and talk a little bit about who he is, where he's from. Go ahead, Buck. Tell the people who you are, where you're from.
My name's Buck Martin. I was raised in Chicago. Lived about everywhere between Illinois and Missouri, Florida, everywhere, and spent most of my time doing time because I was an idiot. It's that simple.
Because you're an idiot. Let's talk a little bit about growing up in Chicago. I mean, how old are you now?
How old am I? Where? What?
How old are you right now?
61.
61 years old,
I'll be 62 on March 31st.
Okay, and you grew up in Chicago, right?
Yes.
What was it like back then growing up in Chicago? What was the world like back then?
Well, it was wide open. There wasn't all this violence. There wasn't a lot of uncaring people. The neighborhoods cared for each other. They watched out for each other. It wasn't about what I can do for me and screw you. It was what can we do for us? See, nowadays it's all about, well, I'm going to try to get mine and to hell with yours. You know what I'm saying? But back then, the worst crimes we ever committed as youngsters were stealing hubcaps and going behind the store and stealing the pop bottles to return them for another deposit. That, I mean, that was the start of my career right there.
And you kind of started your career of crime, I guess, at a young age, right?
Yes.
How old were you when you...
That's very young.
You told me before we started the interview that you were part of a gang. And that gang back then was called what?
Gaylords.
Now look, man, people are watching this show. They're going to probably laugh about that. The older guys know about the Gaylords, but a lot of people don't. Tell us a little bit about that gang, about that organization, and how you got involved.
Well, when I was a child, when I was younger, I'd be sent to the store by my mother down to the corner to get bread and milk and stuff like that when it was only like 50 cents a gallon of milk and a nickel for a loaf of bread and all that good stuff. And I kept getting jumped every day by these fellas who happened to be, at that time, Gaylords. But I didn't know all this at the time. So it was either keep getting the shit kicked out of me or join the family. So I joined the family.
So what type of crimes were they committing at 12 years old? I mean, just stealing the hubcaps, things like that?
Look, man, we were stealing hubcaps. Like I said, going behind the grocery stores, getting the pop bottles, the old Pepsi glass bottles, Coke and all that, taking them and return them to another grocery store to get the deposit. And then, the kind of stuff we were doing were patrolling our neighborhoods and make sure the riffraff wasn't coming in. And at that time, it was racially divided. So the main thing was to keep out the undesirables.
And back then, who would the undesirables be?
Anything that wasn't white.
Oh, okay. So the Gaylords was more of a white racist kind of organization for kids?
I wouldn't say racist. I'd say separatists.
Hey, you got to school me, bro, because I don't know. I mean, I think I heard this before, but I really don't know anything about this group, about this gang, and a lot of people listening in, they don't know either. So what was your mission?
Our mission was to keep each other safe and our families safe from other races, other organizations, people that wanted to do bad things in our neighborhood. That's how we started out.
What did it become? I mean, that's how you started out, but what did it become later on?
Well, when I first went to prison, I also want it known that I've never did a juvenile time at all. But when I first went to prison, I was 17. And down there, it was all divided with TJOs, Gaylords, Jousters, all the North Side gangs of Chicago. And they weren't connected. There was a man called Joe Gansey, the TJOs out of Chicago, that united all the North Side gangs into one family, and they called it Northsiders. Joe Gansey was one of the best men I've ever known in my life. the bravest, the toughest, the badasses of all badasses. Trust me, the man was a purebred badass. And he got everything together for all the families of the Northside gangs together to be united as one. But as time goes by with anything else, things deteriorate. Wrong people get wrong positions. Power corrupts everybody and anybody.
Walk
So
into.
it just,
I want to ask you some questions about walking into prison in Illinois at the age of 17. Were you nervous walking in there?
well, I did a year in Cook County Jail. If you could survive Cook County Jail for a year without no problems, there ain't a prison in the world you can't go to.
Let's talk a little bit about Cook County Jail. What was it like back then for a 17-year-old young white man to walk in there?
It was all gang infested, even with the COs, the cops. They were all gang affiliated. And you had to be, I went into a dorm of 100 guys. On the right, you had the 6-point star. On the right, you had the 5-point star. And in the middle, you had the, what do you call them? Neutrons. People that weren't hooked up, but paid taxes. Okay. So, me, I got lucky because I was already affiliated. So I didn't have as many problems as some of the young guys I see come through there that weren't affiliated that had the roughest time of their lives. Trust me, Cook County is no joke.
Tell me about the roughest times of their lives. I want to know about that. What makes it a rough time?
All right, when you first come into a dorm or a block, you're met at the door. There's a line. You don't cross that line until you're questioned. If you don't answer the questions right, and they find out you're, well, we'll get to that in a second. But they got all questions and they got rules right up on the wall. You got to take a shower. You got to do this. You got to do that. Then you have to have a meeting with the heads of the families and find out what's your affiliation, who you know, and what the hell are you doing in jail. And if you come up with the wrong answers, you're getting bebopped right there and sent out of the dorm. I mean, there was no jokes, no hold bar. They beat the living hell out of you. And then when you got sent out of the block, the COs didn't like you. You got bebopped again by what they call 6-1. So it was not pleasant for any young dude. It didn't matter what color you were back then. Did not matter. If you weren't right, you weren't coming in that dorm. Period.
So they would just beat you up back then. They weren't stabbing and stuff like that back then, cutting with razors, none of that?
Well, they got different divisions in Cook County. Depending on what division you went to, is how worse they got for you. I went into, at the time, that was called the House of Corrections, which was where all the younger guys were. But you had Division 1 was the old county where they had a prison yard and they had all the, you got to remember when you go through Cook County Jail or any county jail, all the people that are in prisons got to go through these county jails first. So all your worst people are coming through the county jails first. So if you're in the county jail, you're with the worst of the worst. Now, Division 1 was full of all the killers, murderers, all the bad guys. So at that time, they were trying to look out for the younger guys like me and not put them right in the swimming pool with the sharks. We got in, put in with the minnows first. And if you screwed up later, then you went to the big boy pond and see how you like that.
It's always good to interview.
No joke.
It's always to interview a guy that I would refer to as old school, man, because your perception on things are a little bit different. Sometimes you use words like the other pond and things like that. And I think people will enjoy this interview. The thing is this, right? You end up all right. So you get out of Cook County Jail. We all know Cook County Jail is a vicious place now. Seemed like it was a little dangerous back then, but they weren't actually just brutalized. Weren't killing people back then. Not every day. Now they kill people all the time over there, right?
Yeah, there was occasional killing, there was some stabbings, and there was some severe beatdowns. I mean, they beat people to death. Back then, the knives weren't a big deal. They wanted to really hurt you bad. So you stab a guy in the heart, he falls down, he dies in 3 minutes. But they might turn around and get a guy in the bathroom back there and take turns. This guy go in there for 5 minutes, beat on you, then the next guy, and then these other 2 guys. So it might take 2 hours before they're done with you.
Are the Gaylords respected when you walk into the county jail at 17 years old? Do people know who your gang is, and do they respect that gang?
Yeah, yes, most definitely. But see, when you go in there, you're alone anyway until you find out if there's any of your brothers there. So the first time you come in the door and you tell them who you are, they don't like it. You got to hit them right in the freaking mouth. And that's what I did plenty of times. You don't get respect by just saying, "Hey, I'm so and so, and I know so and so." That don't fly with me. That don't fly with any of the good brothers I know. Because if you can't prove who you are and what you stand for, you ain't shit. You can say anything.
So you end up going to
But
prison. You end up going to prison at 17 years old. You leave Cook County Jail. How much time are you sentenced to at that time?
I was at that time I had a C number, which once you check it out, you'll understand what I'm saying. A C number is for the old law where you got 7.5 days a month good time for the sentence you got, and they had sentences like 1 to 3, 2 to 10, 5 to 15, 20 to life, where 20 was when you got to go to the pro board after you do 20 years. I had a 2 to 10. So after my second year, I went to the pro board and they set me a year because I had a knife case. And it just kept going like that year after year after year.
So how long did you do at that point without getting out if they keep setting you back?
8 flat.
So you did 8 years. You go in at 17. You come home at what, 24, 25?
That's it.
You walk out of prison, right? You got an outlook on life like, hey, man, I'm done with this gang stuff. I just want to, get my life together. I want to work a job. I want to be a normal guy. What are you thinking? Or are you like, hey, I'm going back to my guys?
Well, I'm going to keep it real with you. Not like the rest of these guys that'll tell you, no. That wasn't my intention because I was brought up in prison. I was built prison tough. And when I came out, I was still the same MFer I was when I come out of there. So trying to adapt and get a job with some guy trying to tell you what to do does not work. I don't care who tells you it does, it doesn't. You have to, before you get out, you have to readjust your attitude yourself, or it'll get adjusted for you. Me, it took me a while to get my attitude adjusted, so I kept getting in trouble. Now, intentions are all good. Everybody's got great intentions, but it's how you follow through with those intentions what matters. Oh, yeah, I want to get a job. I want to have a car. I want to have a house. I want to have a wife and kids. I want to, I want to be that guy. But hey, growing up in prison at 17 and coming out, you have an attitude like, if you disrespect me, boy, I don't care who you are, what you stand for, you're going to have to show me that you're able to disrespect me and I'm going to take it.
Let me ask you this, Buck. You're 17. You keep getting set back. You do 8 years. You have any physical confrontations in the Illinois Department of Corrections back then?
I had plenty. The problem is, the confrontations I got into, I made sure were one-on-one, me and you, mano a mano in the bathroom, and there wasn't a bunch of rats back then. So you can go back there and throw hands with somebody. Didn't have to have no knife slinging. You throw hands with somebody, you kick their ass or you get your ass kicked, and then you guys come out and you get along. You don't hold grudges. You guys went in there with an attitude, you come out and it's fixed.
Back then in prison, you could wear an ass whooping if someone was bad enough to give it to you. You were bad enough to wear it.
You got more respect for going toe to toe. If you're, I was lucky because I worked in junkyards before I went into prison, so I was kind of built. I was already 225 pounds, with a 32-inch waist. So I was pretty stout. So, but there were guys in there, brother, I ain't lying to you, that were total monsters. And if you don't stand up, then you're a punk. It's that simple. So, my very first incident was with a guy named Bucky Haynes. This fucking guy could he could put a soda can on his chest and let it sit there. That's how big and massive this guy was. He come to my cell when I was on one guy and told me what he was going to do to me. Well, back then they had these little metal stools in the cell. I introduced Mr. Bucky to that stool, and he never bothered me again. And also, other people come around and say, well, you didn't have to use a weapon. I say, hey, you fight the way you fight, I fight the way I fight. You want a freaking problem, you get all of it. Not some of it, you get it all. So if you don't want it all, kick rocks. That's it.
So when's the next time that you end up in prison again, Buck?
I probably was out 7 months from the first time. Got into a street altercation over a female, and ended up kicking this guy's face in, held him by his hair. He tried to tackle me like a football tackle, and I just grabbed him by his hair and lit his face up. Broke my ankle in the process.
Did you get a parole violation, or was it a new case?
Well, it was both. I got the parole violation and a new case. You know, back then, if they wanted to be mad at you and teach you a lesson, you did the parole violation first. Then you started a new case. That's all changed now. You know, it's all a bunch of, doing time today, brother, in Illinois, in all these prisons, is no big deal. Anybody can say anything or be charged with anything they want and walk around with their head held high like nothing ever happened. With me and my boys, my family, you a child molester, you're done. Nowadays, you go in any prison in Illinois, and 30% of the freaking population is child molesters and rats. And they get to walk around like nobody's business.
That's not going on in the maximum security prisons in Illinois, is it?
Maximum security prisons are locked down. They're in the cell 23 hours a day. So there's not a whole lot of investigating and all that kind of stuff that you could do. Back in my day, we ran the records office. Inmates ran the records office. We did all the secretarial work. We had our guys in place where we knew who you was before you got there. So when you come in the door and you try to lie to us, bad news, pal. That's bad news. Well, number one, when you come to jail, if you're not straight up and you can't be a man and look another man and say, look, this is what I did. I screwed up. I'm here. I'm going to try to make the best of it. You don't like it? Do what you do. But remember, we had the records. Their files came through us first. So we already knew who you was before you got there. So you get to telling lies, you're not going to get it all the way out your mouth without drinking out of a straw for the next 6 months. Back then we had a PC where we ran you, and the police was with the program, and we ran you. We gave you 1 hour. We weren't totally beasts. We gave you 1 hour to pack your shit and get into PC. If you were a minute past that hour, then you got your ass whooped all the way to PC.
You ever have people try to push the time limit?
No, not with us. They do better. Look, you set examples by creating an example. So if you got these guys running around, especially when the bus pulled into the compound while we was out, sometimes them guys will be coming on the gallery and they're seeing somebody get their ass whooped right then and there, and the police are standing there watching. So they already know they're in trouble. So they already know they got to toe a line. And if you want to be the badass and not toe the line, then you got to suffer the consequences of your own action. It's, like in life.
Did there ever come a point when you get out of prison and you stay out for a long period of time?
I stayed out 2 years, got a job. I was doing well. I worked for a kid half my age. I'm an auto mechanic by trade, bumper to bumper. It doesn't matter. I could fix it, work on it, rebuild it, whatever. And in between that time, I've done a lot of other stuff, construction, whatever I could do to make a buck. That's what I was doing to try to keep my butt out of jail. So I got this job. It was a quick change oil place, auto repair place. And we did brakes, tune-ups, change oil, that kind of stuff. Well, one day I'm working and a customer asked me a question about their window wouldn't go up and down, electric window. So I'm having a conversation because I have a little experience with this stuff. And this young kid comes out in front of the customer. Hey, man, you don't talk to customers. Get back in there. Needless to say, that was my last day on the job and almost his first trip to the hospital. But I refrained and I just left. But then I got caught up later. And a friend of mine called me 2:00. Well, I would say friend of mine. I was in the halfway house with him. He was good. We did a lot of things together, and calls me up 2 a.m. He says, hey, man, cops are looking for me. Can you help me out? Well, of course, I'm going to do that. So I jump in my truck. I go pick him up, hit the on-ramp, and there's like 20 squad cars. So I ended up going to jail, never seeing him again. And I got tacked on to his little whatever he was doing, which was a burglary. I couldn't prove I didn't do it because I just didn't have no proof. And with a record like mine, and most guys that come on your show, if you're arrested, you're automatically guilty. They're coming after you because they know you did it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and you got to talk your way out of it, or you got to prove your way out of it. And guys like us normally stick to ourselves, so we're not out in public, and we don't have 80 witnesses to say, "Oh, he was with us." You know what I'm saying? I didn't have any of that, so I ended up going to the county jail. And instead of sitting there for another year or two trying to fight the case, I copped out like most of us do to get out of the county jail and get down to prison so you can get on with your life. And that's what I did. I did 5 months for giving a, I'm going to refrain myself, giving this guy a ride, ended up getting caught up with him. So, and that's the God's truth on my children.
All right, so you end up getting out of prison over there, and you're older now, and you end up in federal prison. How do you end up in federal prison?
Again, I was married. My wife has passed since with cancer, but I've known her for a very long time. She had kids already, and they were 5 and 6, so I knew them all their life. Now that I got older, they're into smoking pot and driving and working and whatever else they're doing. None of my business. But I still consider them my family. So I get a call. They're stealing copper wire. I lived in Illinois in Grant City. They're over in St. Louis stealing copper wire, just cutting down phone wires. I didn't know at the time, but copper wire was going up for like $4 a pound then. Well, they took this little truck with them, and they loaded the copper up, and it broke the rear axle, so they're stuck at the crime scene. So me, being trying to be the guy I was raised to be, I jump in my ton, right out there, get all their stuff loaded in the back of my truck, get them out of there, and then we go to turn it in to the metals place. Nobody's got an ID. Nobody's got a driver's license but me. Me not thinking about it, I produced my driver's license. Well, later on, these same individuals got caught up with something else, and they told about that. So
A federal prison for copper wire?
Yeah, the number 5. If you ever see the telephone poles, that real brown, big, thick wire that's all the way on the bottom, that's jam packed with copper wire, as fine as hair. You got to cut it all out of there, burn it, and roll it. Yeah, it's the big process. But anyway, copper was going for $4 a pound. I had 2,500 pounds. I didn't. They did. So, but anyway, long story short, they go again to try to do the same thing, but they all get caught up because they're drunk. So when they get caught up trying to get their little rat asses out of trouble themselves, they turn the old man in. So they came to me, arrested me, and I got charged for interstate transportation of stolen property. That made it a federal case.
How much time are you sentenced to for that?
I was sentenced to 46 months.
That has got to be one of the craziest federal cases I've ever heard. I've never heard this ever in my life. Didn't even know, when I do legal work, didn't even know that you could go to jail for some shit like that.
Well, right now, with your show, if somebody does something while they're on your show, it's going to be a federal crime because you're crossing state lines. You see what I'm saying? Anytime you cross a state line electronically or whatever else, it's a federal crime if they deemed it to be. I've learned this. I've studied this to try to get my butt out of there. I also went down for a bank robbery, so I'm not a total innocent party here.
Okay, so how much time do you do in the feds? Because we're going to talk about your federal prison time.
I did 46 the first month, the first time, and I did 30 months the second time.
Okay, so
bank
it's fair.
Go ahead, a bank robbery charge, and I had the interstate transportation of stolen property. Now, the other time I went in was for violation of the federal probation because I was also in the state joint. I got out and I was on state parole and federal probation at the same time. And you want to talk about walking down parole? Try to walk them two down at the same time.
Let me ask you this, right? You end up in federal prison. You do all the you do all the state time. You're in federal prison. It's fair to say that you were a career criminal, right?
Yes.
Do you regret being a career criminal?
Well, see, that's a double-edged blade because if I hadn't have done and lived the way I lived, I wouldn't be where I'm at with today with two people that care about me more than my whole family has ever in my whole life. I wouldn't have had my kids. I wouldn't have met my wife, who I love dearly, that passed away from cancer. So I would have to say I have regrets, but I wouldn't change it now because then I'd lose all my kids and my friendship and my brother Bill. I just wouldn't trade that for nothing in the world.
I asked you that because I used to hear a saying, right? Sometimes people get life in prison, and sometimes people do life on the installment plan. And what that means is 5 years here, 8 years there, 2 years
Yeah,
here, 3 years there.
that's me. That's me, brother. I ain't gonna lie to you.
And I'm going to be honest with you, man. I think it's unfortunate. And, interviewing you today, there's a message. And the message is that, and, I'm not saying this to disrespect you, Buck, but I don't want to see dudes that are starting out like you at 17. And now you're 61 years old and you spent the best years of your life in prison. Yeah, you've been out here a few times. You had a wife, you did this, you did that. But the majority of your life was locked in a cage, man.
Right. And what the in between there that a lot of people don't tell you is I've been rich 3 or 4 times. But for naught because I wasn't brought up to manage money. I had a stepfather beat the shit out of me every day of my life since I was 8 years old until I peeled the window back and left and never went back. But I was never good with, how the money was, how powerful the dollar was. So when I made it, I spent it. I've had more cars. These guys get on these internets with these cars. I've had all of them cars and just gave them away or sold them for dirt cheap because I didn't know any better. I do now, but that doesn't do me or the anybody else a bit of good. All that listen, I even tried to go back to college. All right, I did schooling. I got trade work while I was locked up. I didn't waste my whole time. I got welding, I got auto mechanics, I got auto body, I went to business law and all this kind of stuff. All this is under my belt with certificates, and you know what it's worth? The same stuff you wipe your ass with. That's how much that's so it might have been printed on, it should have been printed on toilet paper because that's all it's worth. Because they don't recognize that.
Hey, it's always good to talk to an old school guy. So you end up in Terre Haute. Did you go to the Low, the FCI? Where'd you go when you went to Terre Haute?
I went to the USP, the brand new one. Not the, now the old USP is now a FCI, which is an older building. But right across about say 200 yards, they built a brand new prison called Terre Haute USP, and that is probably worst place I've ever been. The most that's I've had the worst time, the more problems than ever in my life was in Terre Haute USP.
Oh yeah. Well, why do you say that? Tell the people. Why? What made it the worst place you ever been?
Well, when you get there, you come out of the tunnel and there's people standing there waiting, just like at the county jails. But you have to have your paperwork in hand. Okay. Again, I got lucky because when I come through the door, there's three of my childhood friends standing right there. Hey, do we know you? I said, you're damn right you know me. So I had my paperwork, everything's hunky dory. So I didn't have no problems actually being at the prison. It was what happened while I was at the prison that created problems. Okay. By me being a state, let's say a loose term for institutionalized person in the state, going to the feds is like a 180-degree turn because their rules are different than the rules if you go into a county jail or a state prison. State prison's a cakewalk compared to a prison, federal prison, because they got rules, they got regulations, and they will kill you without a second's notice if you violate the smallest of rules. And I've seen it firsthand. Now, me, I ain't gonna lie to you, I kept it low key. I did not like what I was seeing, especially with my own race and other races, and the bullshit that was going down. I wanted no part of. But you're forced into a situation where You either are or you're not. And if you're part of the knots, then you're out of there. No matter what the reputation you got that you brought with you, it does not matter. Because if you don't follow the rules that they set for you, you're out of there. I don't care what you did, how badass you are, what you could do to benefit somebody. They don't want to hear it. It's their program or no program.
See some violence over there? It was a dangerous place.
Listen, I'm there a week. My hand to God, I'm there a week. I'm walking back from commissary, going to my unit, and these two black fellows were arguing about some money. The one dude hit the dude, knocked him out, boom, and then proceeded to jump up and down on the side of his face right here with his foot until his eyes popped out of his head. That's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I ain't gonna lie to you. From that moment on, my eyes were peeled. One eye open 24/7. I kept an eye on everything, everybody. I listened to the whispers. I wasn't going to get caught up like that. And then 2 months in, I'm on the deck, watching TV, minding my own business, and I hear screaming. I turn around, and there's three guys cutting this guy, damn near cut his head off, and he rolls down the stairs. And you know what they did? They locked us up for 1 week and put us back out in population. They don't care. They know you got business to take care of, and they allow you to take care of it to a certain extent. You put your hand on one of theirs, it's over with. But as far as us,
Yeah.
governing each other, which should be because depending on who's running the show, if you're governing each other and you have respect for each other and you have a program in place, things run smooth. But like I said, drugs and alcohol always play a part in there, just like everyday life out here. And it's the worst part.
Was it a wake up call for you finally, or no?
Are you kidding? They're not ever going to see me inside a prison cell again. Not this month. No, no, no. Never, never, never. I don't leave the house, bro. If I leave the house, we go shopping. We get food for the house. We stock up for a month, and we're here. We work around the house. We go. I mean, we don't go out to bars. We don't go to social gatherings. We don't do any of that. And I'm not going to do that because they're never going to get this white ass back in prison ever again. And that's my hand to God. They'll not catch me back in prison. They'll not catch me up. And ain't nobody else ever going to call me 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, bro, help me out. Hey, bro, help yourself. That's how it is. Now, a lot of people might get pissed off at that. But hey, you ain't me. And I'm not going back to prison for you. Sucks to be you if you're in trouble.
I'm not mad at you for it, man. I used to tell people, man, when I got out, man, I'm patting people down before they get in my car because I don't want.
You got to.
I don't want no trouble.
You have to. You have to. You gotta. Hey, and then they're in the car. They gotta clap their hands. You don't know what they're doing in their pockets. Jesus. I mean, people today, the younger generation of today, has no respect. They were born without the consideration gene because they have none for anything or anybody else but themselves. It's the me movement.
Look, man, you're an old school guy. I'm going to get ready to close the show, but from an old school guy, what message would you give to people that are on the wrong path? Young kids, people that are in and out of prison, much like yourself. What message would you give?
Here's the bottom line. If you're on the path, you're going to come to a fork in the road no matter how old you are. You go right, fast life, prison, heartache, death, violence, or you go to the left where you got to work for what you get. But you're not going to be going 100 miles an hour with your hair on fire. You got to live the life, accept the consequences of your actions, and try to be humble. Because if you go out of pocket, somebody's going to be there to catch you. And it's not going to be pretty. Prison is no place for anybody except for child molesters and people that rape women. There's too many women out there willing to share their life with you as long as you're willing to do the right thing. So you don't have to go out there and take nothing from nobody. You can get your own. If you got something from somebody else, it's not yours. It's never going to be yours. You got to get your own. You got to go out there and work for it. And there's plenty of opportunity. Plenty. You just got to be willing to do the work. Sometimes people will say, "Oh, I'm not going to go clean that bathroom." Hey, clean the bathroom or go to prison. I'm cleaning the bathroom, bro.
Look, man, I appreciate you coming on. And like I said before, man, no disrespect to you, but my message today for people watching this is don't be like Buck. Don't wait till you're 60 years old, 61 years old, and you're seeing people get jumped on their heads and their eyes popping out before you say, hey, I'll clean that bathroom because I don't want to go back to prison. I don't want people to be doing life on the installment plan. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%, brother. I don't feel like you're disrespecting me. You're telling the truth. And that's the way I like things done. Tell the truth. Don't sit there and tell me, blow smoke up my ass and say, oh, blah, 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 and then turn around and go back and tell somebody else, that piece of shit, low life. Hey, been there, done that. Don't live like I lived. You better straighten your act out now, or you're going to be like me. You're going to be watching some old guy on the show like this, telling the younger guys, hey, don't do this. You want to be like me? Well, you got to do a lifetime of prison to do it. So you better think about it before you choose that path.
Well, look, Buck, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate your message. I hope it resonates with some people. And, man, I'm going to close the show and let people know to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video. With respect, until tomorrow, we're out.